Hi, friends. A really warm welcome. And thank you for joining me here for How to Start Your Own Death Cafe. So, I'm Amy. I am an interfaith minister, I'm a funeral director, and I'm also the host of the Blue Mountains Death Café here on Dharug and Gundungurra Country in the beautiful Blue Mountains of Australia. And over the last 12 months now, I've watched something really remarkable happen in our community, where a group of strangers come together each month. We drink tea, we eat cake, and we talk about death, and we talk about dying, and we talk about life, and we talk about living. And not really in sort of hushed or uncomfortable ways, but we talk about it openly and honestly, and sometimes with tears and sometimes with laughter, but always, always with cake. This very short course, I want to share with you my 10 tips on how you can start a death cafe in your community. You don't need to be a funeral director. You don't need to have counseling experience or qualifications. You really just need a willingness to hold space, show up, gather your community, and you will need an excellent cake. That is the only requirement. Let's jump in. So before we get into how, I want to take a moment to really honor the why death cafes exist in the first place. So the Death Cafe movement began in London in 2011 and was founded by a man named Jon Underwood. And his vision was very simple, but also very radical. What would happen if people could just come together over tea and cake and talk about death with no agenda, without someone trying to sell them something or convert them into a certain belief system or fix their grief? What if we just had these spaces in our community to come together and really square up to these big conversations that we so rarely get to have? Sadly, Jon died in 2017. He was only 44 and he died from an acute leukemia. But he was, by all accounts, someone who had such a love for life. I was actually living in London and was lucky enough to attend Jon's death cafes. So I always introduce myself as a bit of a death cafe purist. I truly learnt from the best. And it's such an honor to carry forward Jon's legacy and see death cafes pop up all over the world. Jon's family are continuing to really steward the Death Cafe movement, and there's a great website, deathcafe.com, which is full of resources and directories for anyone who's looking to join or to start a death cafe. And so every time we start and open our Blue Mountains Death Cafe, we're really continuing something that Jon started. I always begin by saying his name and thanking him for this beautiful seed he's planted, which continues to have a huge ripple effect around the world. Okay, so let's jump in. Here are my 10 tips to help you start your own death cafe in your community. Tip number 1, know your roots. So before you host your first gathering, I recommend that you spend some time on that deathcafe.com website. They've got loads of resources. Read through the guide, understand the principles. Sometimes it's easier to clarify what a death cafe is by saying what a death cafe is not. It's not a grief support group. It's not a professional therapy session or workshop. It is an open, agenda-free conversation about death and dying and what it means to be human. And that distinction really matters. So knowing what it is and knowing what it isn't will help you hold it really well. Tip number 2, it's always free of charge, no money, no tickets, free. And this is a real non-negotiable for the Death Cafe model. And I think it's one of the most important things about it, that the Death Cafe is always free of charge. And this isn't just a nice idea, it's genuinely what makes it accessible to everybody in our community. Death isn't a topic that should only be available to those who can pay for it. So if you're using a venue and maybe they want to charge you a little bit and you need to offset that with ticket prices, rather than trying something like that, really try and find some partners in your community that will maybe give you a space free of charge, or consider hosting it in free community spaces like a library, like a community hall, like a bookshop. That's where we gather for the Blue Mountains Death Café, a beautiful bookshop called Rosie Ravelston's up in Lawson. And because they believe in the idea so much, they very generously let us gather in their bookshop of an evening for free. So push on those doors. You'll be surprised what opens for you, but it's always free. Tip number 3, cake. Bring the cake. I can't convey how important this is, even though it sounds, a bit light and cute and funny. There's a reason for it. Because honestly, there's something about the ritual of the cake, about nourishing our bodies and really sharing something sweet and delicious together during these big conversations, is actually a really ancient and sort of instinctive act of care and connection. So the cake at a death cafe, it's not just for decoration. It's truly part of the ritual. It really says you are welcome here. You will be nourished here. We're going to take care of each other in this space. Have some cake. Or even just bringing some fruit or some dark chocolate. You have to have something in the middle that's sweet and delicious and nourishing that can be shared. It truly makes such a difference. Okay, tip number 4, find your space. So have a think about where your community already gathers. Places like libraries, cafes, bookshops, neighborhood centers, community halls. The space where you meet for a death cafe really sets the tone. And if you want it to feel warm and accessible and ordinary, not sort of clinical or formal, I've seen a few different models over the years, and it really makes a difference whether we're meeting in a sweet, cozy bookshop surrounded by stories, or we're meeting under the fluoro lights at the bowling club with the sound of the pokey machines going off all night. It makes a difference. So when you're figuring out where to host it, really listen into what the space feels like. If your space has a bit of life and character to it, all the better. Tip 5, small groups are beautiful. In terms of numbers, the sweet spot is really between about 12 to 15 people. So it's enough to bring real diversity to the conversation, but it's small enough that everybody has room to speak if they want to. And we've had a few nights where people have rocked up and we were sort of beyond close to 20 people, and it was too big. The group felt too large. Voices get lost, people hold back. That sort of quality of the intimacy really disappears. We've had occasional nights where a lot of people dropped out last minute and the group size was sort of 6, 7, and that sort of felt maybe the opposite. It was sort of a bit too small. Everyone felt a bit naked. So that real sweet spot is around that 12 to 15. I really encourage you to ticket the events. I know I've banged on before about how important it is that they're free. There are websites out there like Humanitix or Eventbrite where they won't charge you if it is a free event. And that way you can still invite people to reserve their free place or book your free ticket, or whatever language will work best for your community. But ticketing the event so that you can try and control those numbers is really important. My other little bonus tip is you want to always overbook slightly, because every month without fail, there's 2 or 3 no-shows, probably because it's free and also because it's an edgy conversation. And often I get to see sort of the people that book and cancel, or book and don't show up, months and months and months in the making. And then I might reach out to them and be like, oh, hey, I've just seen you've booked for the Death Cafe again. Would love to, see if there's anything I can do to help you arrive in the space. I know it's a big conversation. Is there anything you want to know about how it goes or what to expect? You can actually reach out to people to try and help them over that threshold and get them in the room. Having said that, there's always still a few people last minute, sickness, weather, etc. So do create a little buffer for yourself. Tip number 6, I'm calling open with care. So how you open a death cafe conversation can really set the tone for the rest of the evening. And I've created a bit of a cheat sheet for myself about the main points that I always hit when I'm initially sort of opening up the space. Here in Australia, whenever we're meeting sort of publicly within the community, we'd always begin with what we call an acknowledgement of country, and that is acknowledging the First Nations peoples and traditional owners of the land on which we're gathering. So sometimes instead of me saying that every month, I would invite, is there anyone who would like to offer an acknowledgement of country for us? It's a really nice way of bringing different voices into the room. I always love hearing how different people offer an acknowledgement of country. It's really beautiful to receive that. So once we've acknowledged country, I then acknowledge Jon Underwood. Like I've covered, I say his name, I talk a bit about his legacy and how beautiful it is that these death cafes now take place all around the world. And then I very briefly move into, and again, put your own language around this, I move into what I call group agreements. And that covers things like, in this space, we're not really here to give advice or to receive advice. We're not here to fix each other. There's no subtle advertising. No one's here to subliminally sort of sell a product or a service or a philosophy. There's no converting or belief systems or philosophies or traditions are welcome here. And I really encourage people to speak from their own experience. So using I language. So speaking about what is true for you. So these agreements, again, sort of just create enough of a really gentle container, and it helps communicate to people that, you know, they're safe here, that you can say what you actually think and know that everybody's going to be holding that with generosity. Tip number 7, ask the right question. So once I've opened that initial space, I always begin with the same question. What has brought you here? It sounds really simple, and it is really simple, but because it doesn't assume anything, it invites the first timers to share genuinely what drew them to a death cafe. And it invites the regulars, the people who have been coming for months, to really check in with themselves and get clear on what is alive in them that day, what is dying in them that day, what is grieving in them that day. Because it changes, and it always changes. And I find that question in particular is always a really beautiful first offering just to plant into the space and watch it sort of ripple out. And then whoever feels inclined often just speaks first, and then you're away. Tip number 8, make room for the quiet ones. One of the most important things you'll do as a host is to make sure that the quieter voices in the room get a chance to be heard. And obviously not by forcing anybody to speak, but just by creating gentle openings. Like a phrase I often use is, okay, so let's maybe just take a moment now to create a bit of space for any voices we haven't heard yet. And that's a really gentle way of the people that might have been sort of dominating the space or speaking a lot to just gently sit back. And it just creates enough of a clearing for the people who haven't spoken at all yet to take the floor if they wish. It signals to those people who haven't spoken yet that there's space for them. And it tends to just slightly shift the energy in a way that feels really natural rather than sort of like orchestrated or a bit micromanaged. Some of the most beautiful things I've heard in a death cafe have come from someone who almost didn't speak at all. So it's really important that we just sort of crack the door open enough for them a fraction to bring their voice in if they want to. And of course, there's no obligation. I've had people that come, they don't say a word. They just sit with hot tears falling down their face for the whole night. And then they give me a big hug when they leave and they're like, thank you. Can I come again next month? Sure, darling. Okay, tip number 9, tell everybody. So don't be shy about letting people know that death cafes exist, They can sound confronting from the outside, but the conversations I've had with people in community, people are genuinely, if it's going to interest them, it's going to interest them. It's going to pique their interest. So when people hear about it, they're genuinely curious, or perhaps even quietly relieved that something like this exists. So here's some of the best ways to get the word out. So all your local community groups, neighborhood apps, flyers at your local library, cafe, bookshops, neighborhood centers, contact your local newspaper. I was interviewed for this write-up in our local Blue Mountains Gazette. I had a lovely woman find me on the street and was like, "Did I see your face in the paper when I was wrapping my onions the other night?" I was like, "Yeah, that was me, babe." Local media, radio, newspapers is a great one. It's such a great thing to talk about. Anybody and everybody can talk about it. You can also list your event on the deathcafe.com website. Another great way for anyone who kind of comes across it and is looking for something local. And just telling people, talking about it in person, talking about it at the school gate pickups at your kids' school, talking about it at your neighbours' bowls meet up at the sports club, your local soccer team, whatever it might be. Just genuinely be like, "Oh, I'm actually starting this cool new death cafe. It's a global movement. We're starting one here. Do you want to come along?" Anyone can come. Who doesn't want to chat about death and dying? Because actually, here's the secret. Chatting about death and dying always turns into a deeper conversation about life and living. So don't overthink it. A simple, honest description is all you need. Feel free to borrow any of the language on the Blue Mountains Death Cafe stuff online if that's helpful in any way. Just get the word out there. And I promise you, people will come. The pure intention of the Death Cafe model has its own sort of invitational frequency that the people it is meant to attract, it will attract. You just create the space and they will come. Okay, on to my last tip. Number 10, get yourself out of the way, my friend. So here's the thing that no one tells you before your first death cafe, and that is you don't need to know what to say. Okay, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to be an expert on death or grief or the afterlife or any of it, really. Your job is just there to offer the space, okay, not to fill it. The conversation will naturally really find its own shape and its own rhythm, and it sort of has to find its own path depending on the people that are in the room. And this is what I love about it. It changes every month. And observing that pattern of all the different endless directions the conversations can go in, it changes all the time. But I'm not there trying to frantically micromanage the conversation or trying to steer it over here or back down this way. Really, my job is just to sit back and sort of participate, as someone who's alongside this beautiful group of people, wherever the conversation takes us that night. Someone might say something that really changes or challenges the way you think about life. Again, this is the magic of it. You're not there as a master. You're there as a companion alongside your community. So allow yourself to receive the beauty and the wisdom of these gatherings as well. So there's my 10 tips. I'll put them all below so you can read through them too if that's more helpful. But I just want to close by saying that whatever that interest or curiosity in you that made you even click on this video and watch all the way through to this point, I really encourage you to listen and to act on that curiosity or that little nudge inside you that's like, maybe this is something I could do. Because we cannot have enough of these spaces in our communities, in our country, on our planet. Death cafes really belong in our community halls, in our libraries, in our bookshops. They belong wherever people like you are brave enough to say, let's stop pretending this isn't happening. Let's just start talking about it together. You don't need to wait for anyone to give you permission to do this. And if you do, here it is. Just gave you permission. Now off you go. Go find a lovely cake, find a beautiful little nook in your community, and let them come and let the conversations nourish you and your community. It's really that simple. and it can be that beautiful. You just need a cake and the willingness to begin. So off you go. Off you go. Go find your cake. And let me know how you go. If you have any other questions, I'm here. I'd really love to hear about how it goes for you. Okay, friends, onwards.